On November 5th, 2025, two new images of the interstellar object 3I Atlas were released by the Virtual Telescope Project. And what these images revealed left the scientific community even more perplexed. The photographs show Atlas as a compact source of light without any sign of a visible cometary tail. Even more surprising, the object's appearance remains virtually unchanged since the Hubble Space Telescope observations back in July 2025. As Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb calculated, for an object that should have lost at least 13% of its total mass, more than 5.5 billion tons of material, this absence of a massive and bright coma is simply inexplicable. If you want to understand why this is potentially the most important astronomical discovery in human history, hit that like button now. Because what I'm about to show you challenges everything we thought we knew about interstellar objects. To put this in perspective, the same images also captured Comet Leonard, a common comet from our solar system. Leonard displays exactly what we would expect: a clear and bright tail pointing away from the sun, formed by solar radiation pressure, pushing gases and dust into space. This is what comets do. This is what comets look like: a bright, visible tail streaming behind them as they travel through the solar system. Atlas, on the other hand, remains mysteriously clean without the visual signature that should accompany the massive material loss necessary to explain its non-gravitational acceleration. According to Loeb, this is just the latest evidence that Atlas is not behaving like any natural object we know. And this leads us to a fundamental question that science needs to seriously address. Make sure you're subscribed, because what comes next will completely change how you think about what's possible in our universe. So there has been a lot of misinformation and alarmism about Atlas and its acceleration. In this video, we're going to analyze the real data and find out if this could really indicate something extraordinary observing our solar system. Right at its closest point to the sun, Atlas began accelerating in ways that gravity alone cannot explain. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory presented a report showing that Atlas is 4 arcseconds away from where it should be based on gravitational calculations. This may not seem like much, but when you're tracking something 203 million kilometers from the sun, this deviation is enormous. The object is accelerating at about 0.02 millimeters per second squared. To put this in perspective, over just 1 month, this small acceleration pushed Atlas out of its expected path by about 80,000 kilometers. 80,000 kilometers, that's twice the circumference of Earth. That's an enormous deviation from where pure gravitational calculations say it should be. The acceleration has 2 components, and this is critical to understand. It's pushing away from the sun at 135 kilometers per day squared, which results in about 60,000 kilometers per month in the radial direction. And it's also moving laterally at 60 kilometers per day squared, which is another 27,000 kilometers laterally. So this object isn't just drifting in one direction, following a predictable gravitational path. It's being pushed outward and laterally at the same time. This is a 2-dimensional acceleration pattern. Natural gravitational forces don't create patterns like this. Gravity pulls in one direction, toward the mass creating the gravitational field. But we're seeing acceleration in 2 perpendicular directions simultaneously. That's the signature of directional thrust, not passive forces. Now, before anyone panics, this acceleration isn't sending Atlas toward Earth. The deviation isn't enough to change its path toward any planet in our solar system, except Jupiter, where it's expected to arrive in March 2026. So there's no planetary defense issue here. We're safe. This is purely a scientific mystery. drop a comment with your thoughts, because what I'm about to explain next is where things get really interesting. So what exactly is non-gravitational acceleration? Think of it this way. When you throw a ball, gravity pulls it down in a predictable path. You can calculate exactly where it will land based on the initial velocity and Earth's gravitational pull. But if that ball suddenly had small rockets firing on it, it would go off course. The path would no longer match your gravitational calculations. That's what's happening here. Atlas isn't following the path that only the sun's gravity would create. Something else is pushing it. For a comet, which is what Atlas is officially classified as, the natural explanation is outgassing. Here's how that works. Comets are made of ice, rock, and dust. When they get close to the sun, solar radiation heats up the surface. The ice sublimates, turning directly from solid to gas without melting. That gas escapes from the surface, and as it does, it creates thrust, like a natural rocket engine. This is totally normal for comets. We've observed it hundreds of times. It's called the rocket effect, and it's a well-understood phenomenon. The problem, and this is a massive problem, is the amount of gas that would need to be coming out of Atlas to create the acceleration we're observing. And this is where things get really interesting. Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb did the calculations using basic physics, the kind of physics you learn in undergraduate mechanics courses. If you know the acceleration of an object, and you know its mass, you can calculate how much thrust is needed to produce that acceleration. Newton's second law, force equals mass times acceleration. From there, if you assume the thrust is coming from gas escaping the surface, you can calculate how much gas needs to be ejected to create that force. So let's look at the numbers, because they're absolutely staggering. Atlas weighs at least 33 billion tons. 33 billion tons. It's huge compared to the first two interstellar objects we found. It's somewhere between 1,000 and 1 million times more massive than Oumuamua or Borisov. Its core is estimated at about 3.5 miles across, or nearly 6 kilometers in diameter. That's not a small object. We're talking about a mountain-sized mass traveling through interstellar space. With that mass and that acceleration, the calculations show something remarkable. To create that push through natural outgassing, through ice sublimating and gas escaping, Atlas would need to lose at least 1/6 of its total mass during the month around its closest approach to the sun. 1/6 of its entire mass. That's at least 5.5 billion tons of gas being ejected in the span of about 30 days. Let me repeat that because it's an astonishing number. 5.5 billion tons of gas. For comparison, when Mount St. Helens erupted in 1980, one of the most violent volcanic explosions in modern history, it ejected about 1 billion tons of material. Atlas would need to eject 5.5 times that amount, in 1 month, continuously. Now here's the critical part that everyone needs to understand. That amount of gas doesn't just disappear invisibly into space. When billions of tons of gas are ejected from a comet, they form what's called a coma, a massive glowing cloud around the nucleus. This coma scatters sunlight, fluoresces from solar UV radiation, and becomes incredibly bright. It would be impossible not to see with our telescopes. We're talking about a cloud that would be visible to amateur astronomers with backyard telescopes. Professional observatories would see it as clear as day. And here's where we get to test the hypothesis. Between late November 2025 and late January 2026, dozens of ground-based telescopes will be observing Atlas. The Hubble Space Telescope will point its instruments at it. The James Webb Space Telescope, the most powerful observatory ever built, will analyze its spectrum in exquisite detail. On December 19th, Atlas makes its closest approach to Earth at 167 million miles. If that massive gas cloud is there, If billions of tons of material are being ejected to create the observed acceleration, we're going to see it. There's absolutely no way we'll miss it. But what if it's not there? What if the observations show only a small amount of outgassing, or no visible coma at all? This is where the scientific discussion gets really compelling. If we don't see that massive gas cloud, then the natural explanation fails. It doesn't just become unlikely, it becomes physically impossible. If there's no cloud corresponding to the amount of gas needed to create this acceleration, then we have to seriously consider that the acceleration is coming from something else, something technological. If you're finding this as fascinating as I am, share this video, because what comes next is going to challenge some fundamental assumptions about what's possible. The thing is, we've seen this exact pattern before, with Oumuamua, the first interstellar object which passed through our solar system in 2017, also showed non-gravitational acceleration. It was accelerating away from the Sun in a way that gravity alone couldn't explain. Scientists looked for outgassing. They pointed every available telescope at it, including the supersensitive Spitzer Space Telescope, which can detect even tiny amounts of gas and dust. They found nothing. No visible coma, no dust tail, no gas emissions detectable by any instrument. Even Spitzer, which can detect the faint infrared glow from microscopic dust particles, came up empty. Scientists ended up calling it a dark comet, which is basically an oxymoron. The defining characteristic of a comet is its tail of gas and dust. A comet without a tail is like calling something a dry ocean or a cold fire. It's a contradiction in terms. But they had to call it something because it was clearly accelerating and clearly not showing the expected outgassing. Now, Atlas is showing us something even stranger than Oumuamua. It's showing two additional strange behaviors that make the natural explanation even harder to accept. First, there's the brightness issue. As Atlas approached the Sun, its brightness increased following a power law with an exponent of -7.5. For people who don't speak math, here's what this means in plain language. Normal comets get brighter as they approach the Sun following a power law with an exponent of about -2 to -3. That means if you cut the distance to the Sun in half, the comet gets about 4 to 8 times brighter. That's predictable, understood, and matches what we observe with solar system comets. Atlas is getting bright much faster than any normal comet. It's increasing at more than double the rate we would expect. With an exponent of -7.5, cutting the distance in half makes it roughly 180 times brighter instead of just 4 to 8 times. This is completely unprecedented. No comet we've ever studied, and we've studied hundreds, shows this kind of brightness increase. Second, and this is the 9th anomaly on the list, Atlas is blue, not just slightly blue-tinted. It's appearing bluer than the Sun itself at its closest approach. This is extremely strange for multiple reasons. First, dust naturally makes things appear redder, not bluer. When you look at a sunset, it's red because sunlight is scattering off dust particles in the atmosphere. Dust absorbs blue light and scatters red light. If Atlas were a normal comet producing dust, we'd expect it to look reddish, or at least neutral in color. Second, Atlas's surface should be about 20 times colder than the Sun's surface. The Sun's surface is about 5,800 degrees Kelvin. Atlas, even at perihelion, should be maybe a few hundred degrees Kelvin at most. Cold surfaces don't glow blue. They glow red or infrared. Think about heating metal. When it's cool, it's dark. Heat it a little, it glows red. Heat it more, it glows orange, then yellow, then white, then blue. Blue glow means high temperature. So why is Atlas glowing blue when it should be relatively cold. Natural explanations involve ionized gases like carbon dioxide emitting light directly. When gas molecules are hit by intense solar UV radiation, they can become ionized. They lose electrons and become charged particles. These ionized gases can emit light at specific wavelengths, creating colors that don't correspond to temperature. Carbon dioxide ions, for example, can produce blue emissions. So it's possible, theoretically possible, that Atlas has an unusually high amount of carbon dioxide sublimating from its surface, and that CO2 is being ionized by solar radiation, producing the blue glow. This is possible, but it would require a very specific composition, a very specific geometry of gas emission, and very specific solar illumination conditions. It's not impossible, but it's adding another layer of this has to be just right explanations on top of all the other anomalies. Now, it's important to understand what's really being argued here. Scientists aren't declaring that Atlas is definitely alien technology. They're not saying this is a probe or this is artificial with certainty. What they're saying is more nuanced and more important. The argument is about scientific methodology. When you have data that doesn't fit your theories, you can't just dismiss the data. You can't say, well, it must be outgassing, even though we can't see the gas, because what else could it be? You have to take it seriously and explore all possible explanations, even the uncomfortable ones. Some scientists were saying the data must be wrong because they couldn't explain it. Dr. Avi Loeb told them that's terrible science. You can't say the data is wrong just because you don't have a theory that fits it. The data is what the data is. If your theory doesn't explain the data, you need a better theory, not an excuse to ignore the measurements. Atlas is a singular object in our solar system, highlighting not just the facts, but their implications, and why each one challenges current understanding. Unlike anything we've ever seen, it presents various anomalies. Let me walk you through all of them, because when you see them together, the cumulative effect is staggering. First anomaly, the impossible path. Atlas is traveling along a line aligned to just 5 degrees from the plane where all planets orbit our star. Imagine a table where all the balls are rolling on the same level. That's the ecliptic plane. An object coming from another stellar system should arrive from any random direction in space, like a ball thrown from far away that can come from above, below, any side. But Atlas arrived almost perfectly aligned with the planet's table level. The probability of this happening by chance is only 0.2%, like hitting a tiny target in the dark. Second anomaly, the jet that defies physics. During July and August 2025, Atlas did something never seen in nature. It created a jet of material directed straight toward our star. All known comets do the opposite. They always create tails that point away from the sun, like hair flowing in the wind when you run. It's a basic physical law. Solar radiation pressure pushes material outward. Atlas broke this fundamental rule as if someone were running, but their hair flew forward against the wind. Third anomaly, too big and too fast. Atlas is 1,000,000 times more massive than Oumuamua and 1,000 times larger than Borisov, but still moves faster than similar objects. It's like finding a giant truck overtaking race cars on the highway. Larger objects in interstellar space normally move slower due to the gravitational forces that expelled them from their origin systems. When a planetary system ejects an object, light objects get accelerated to high speeds. Heavy objects get accelerated to lower speeds. It's conservation of momentum. Atlas breaks this rule with very low probability. It's enormous and fast, which shouldn't happen naturally. Fourth anomaly, timing too perfect. Atlas arrived with perfect timing to pass close to Mars, Venus, and Jupiter, but remained invisible from Earth during the most important moment, perihelion. It's as if a tourist visited 3 important cities in a country, but managed to completely avoid the main airport's security cameras. The temporal precision of this sequence is extremely rare, rarer than winning the lottery. For the object to pass near multiple planets, while simultaneously timing its perihelion passage to occur during solar conjunction, as viewed from Earth, requires an alignment that shouldn't happen by chance. Fifth anomaly: factory composition. Spectral analysis revealed that Atlas contains nickel and iron in a proportion typical of metallic alloys produced industrially on Earth. Natural comets should have a random mixture of metals like a soup of cosmic ingredients. But Atlas has a specific recipe, as if someone had carefully chosen the ingredients. When we analyze the light reflected by an object, we can determine its chemical composition. Different elements absorb and emit light at specific wavelengths. Atlas shows metals in proportions that match refined alloys, not natural rock or ice. The probability of this specific composition occurring naturally is very low. Sixth anomaly: dry as a desert. Comets are known as dirty snowballs because they are 80 to 90% water ice. That's the definition of what makes a comet a comet. Atlas has only 4% water. It's drier than many deserts on Earth. It's drier than the Atacama Desert, one of the driest places on our planet. It's like finding an iceberg that's almost all rock. This characteristic challenges the very definition of what a comet is, suggesting it might not be a natural comet at all. You can't have a dry comet any more than you can have wet fire. It's a contradiction in terms. Seventh anomaly: impossible polarized light. Atlas showed a light polarization pattern never seen in any known natural object. Polarization is like light's fingerprint. When light reflects off a surface, it becomes polarized, meaning the light waves align in specific orientations. Each type of surface creates a unique pattern. The degree and angle of polarization tells us about the surface texture, composition, and structure. It's as if Atlas had a fingerprint that doesn't exist in any file in nature, including all comets ever studied, even Borisov, the only other confirmed interstellar comet. Atlas has a signature that doesn't match anything we've catalogued. Eighth anomaly: connection to the 1977 mystery. Atlas arrived from the same direction as the famous WOW signal of 1977, the most mysterious radio signal ever detected, and which many consider the best evidence of extraterrestrial communication. Let me explain the significance of this. The WOW signal was detected by the Big Ear radio telescope at Ohio State University. It was a strong narrowband radio signal that lasted 72 seconds. The signal had all the characteristics of an artificial transmission. It was at a frequency that natural sources don't produce. It was precisely the frequency that hydrogen atoms emit, which scientists had theorized would be a logical choice for interstellar communication. The signal was never detected again, despite repeated searches. For almost 50 years, it's remained a mystery. The directional precision is impressive, like 2 events separated by almost 50 years, pointing to the same cosmic address. Now Atlas arrives from the same celestial coordinates. The probability of this coincidence is astronomically low. Ninth anomaly: hotter than our star. Now, Atlas appears bluer than our own star, suggesting it possesses an internal energy source hotter than the Sun's 5,800 degrees Kelvin. It's like finding a candle that shines more intensely than a bonfire. This is basic thermodynamics. Objects don't spontaneously become hotter than their heat source. A rock in sunlight doesn't glow brighter than the sun. Yet Atlas is doing exactly that. It's emitting light at a color temperature that exceeds the Sun's surface temperature. This indicates technology capable of generating temperatures superior to our star, something completely beyond our current capabilities. If there's more energy going out than coming in from solar radiation, it means there's an internal power source. And that requires an explanation that natural comet models simply cannot provide. The physics is clear. Massive acceleration requires massive mass loss. If we don't see the gas cloud that should accompany such mass loss, we're left with only one explanation that fits the data. Something is producing thrust without ejecting visible material. Something is generating heat beyond what solar radiation can provide. Something is maneuvering with precision that natural objects don't exhibit. As we approach December 19th, when Atlas reaches its closest point to Earth, hundreds of telescopes will be searching for 5.5 billion tons of lost gas. Professional observatories around the world are coordinating observation campaigns. Amateur astronomers are preparing their equipment. Radio telescopes are listening for any artificial signals. The Hubble Space Telescope will capture detailed images. The James Webb Space Telescope will analyze chemical composition with unprecedented precision. If that gas is there, if we see the massive coma that should be present, then we'll have confirmed an exotic but natural explanation. Atlas will be the strangest comet ever observed, but still a comet. But if that gas isn't there, if the observations show no massive cloud, despite the acceleration continuing, then we'll know we're not looking at a comet. We'll be looking at something much more extraordinary. A piece of technology from another world, demonstrating propulsion capabilities that challenge our understanding of physics itself. Technology that can accelerate without visible exhaust. Technology that can generate temperatures exceeding our sun. Technology that can navigate with precision through our solar system. The countdown to potentially the most significant discovery in human history has begun. In just a few weeks, we'll know if we're truly alone in the universe, or if we're currently observing our first confirmed visitor from the stars. Think about what that means. For all of human history, we've wondered if we're alone. We've built radio telescopes to listen for signals. We've sent probes to explore our solar system. We've searched for biosignatures on distant exoplanets. And now, potentially, the answer is here. Not light years away, not decades of travel time away. Here, in our solar system, passing close enough to Earth that we can study it in detail. The European Space Agency's Hera spacecraft and NASA's Europa Clipper both had trajectories that potentially intersected with Atlas's ion tail. If they sampled material, we'll have direct physical evidence. In March 2026, when Atlas approaches Jupiter, NASA's Juno spacecraft will observe it with instruments that can detect electromagnetic activity. We have the tools. We have the capability. The question is whether we're ready for the answer. Because if Atlas is artificial, everything changes. Our perspective on our place in the universe, our understanding of what's technologically possible, our priorities as a civilization. We'll know that we're not alone, that there are others out there, that they have technology far beyond ours, that they're capable of sending objects across interstellar distances. And we'll have to ask, why did they send it? What is it observing? What happens next? These are the questions that will define the coming decades if Atlas proves to be artificial. But even if it's natural, even if we discover exotic chemistry that explains everything, we'll have learned something profound about the universe, about what's possible in nature, about how matter behaves in ways we never imagined. Either way, we're living through a historic moment. If you found this analysis compelling, smash that like button and subscribe for updates as this story develops. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you think Atlas really is? The strangest natural comet ever detected, or our first confirmed interstellar visitor? Share this video with someone who needs to see it. Because mainstream media isn't covering the details. They're either ignoring the story or sensationalizing it without explaining the actual science. We're breaking down the real data, the actual calculations, the genuine mystery that scientists are grappling with right now. The universe is speaking to us through this impossible object. It's accelerating without visible gas. It's glowing bluer than it should. It's following a path it shouldn't. It's exhibiting behavior that challenges every natural explanation. And in a few weeks, we'll have our answer. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.